everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation, right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Thursday. Very interesting show for you guys today. So that's why I'm a little bit late, putting it all together, getting it all ready for you guys. So we're going to have some stuff on, obviously, we're going to talk about Devin Nunes. I do want to talk about some of the stuff that Donald Trump had said that interested me. But we also have some important stuff about what the administration is actually doing. For example, how much the administration is cutting investment in alternative energy. It is not going to surprise you, but I think the number is, well, very, very important to point out just how much is being cut from the budget. Then we talk about the budget deficit, Republicans, and their insistence in spending more money. I think you're going to be surprised at that story and the direction that I take on that. Then we have a really, really sad story. I don't want to really give too much of it away, but I think it's relatable and makes a good case, another good case for Medicare for all. And then, of course, we've also we're gonna end the show on some good news. So, all right. Now, if you haven't already, please like and share on YouTube, especially in Facebook. Sharing is caring. Helps get the word out for the show. That said, before I get started, of course, I want to thank the patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you can help out the show. There are other ways as well. You can do the super chat, which is pretty cool. That also goes to help the show, and it elevates your comments. And if I see it, I will normally read it. So, that said, let's jump in. Let's start out with something ridiculous and go to something more serious. All right. Check that. All right. It didn't take long. But yes, I do want to cover some Trump stuff. All right, so you remember that on Tuesday, Donald Trump gave his State of the Union speech, right? Now, of course, it was your standard Donald Trump speech, a lot of anti-immigrant bias, of course. There's a lot of racist undertones and things like that. Now, one of the disturbing parts about that speech is more of an aside, but the fact that not only were the Republicans groveling and like, oh, yes, Donald, what a great speech. That was so amazing. I love how you went after the immigrants. I love how you kept trotting out people from the military in order to promote more militarism, more military-industrial complex, things like that. We can't get enough. But it's also the Democrats that were clapping for this guy as well. Now, of course, that's the exclusion of Bernie Sanders, who, did clap, but it was more one of those which was fantastic. Just watching the guy's face during that speech tells you everything you need to know. But anyway, so yes, there were some Democrats that were earnestly clapping for President Trump. I'm looking at you, Joe Manchin. And again, that was incredibly disturbing. But to the main point, afterwards, right, in true Trumpian fashion, the president took to Twitter, of course, to brag about his viewership. Because, hey, why not, right? Now, he tweeted out, "Thank you for all the nice compliments and reviews on the State of the Union speech. 45.6 million people watched, the highest number in history. Fox News beat every other network for the first time ever, with 11.7 million people tuning in, delivered from the heart." Okay, hey, look, wow, 45.6 million people. Hey, that's a lot of people. That's pretty impressive, and it's true. Fox News actually had 11.7 million. They did break records. Now, congratulations to them, I guess, right? Now, as far as the statement of delivered from the heart, more like delivered from the teleprompter, because, look, you can tell when he's on teleprompter and when he's off teleprompter. When he's on, he can actually give a fairly coherent speech. When he's off, well, then he starts rambling, and it's awesome. Now, his speech, actually, to go back to my previous point, was more or less a work of Stephen Miller, who is, of course, deeply anti-immigrant, deeply racist, and that came out and came through in a big, big way in that speech. But anyway, 45.6 million people, that's an impressive number, right? Now, even though I think personally half of those people are likely hate watching, okay, fair enough. But was it the highest number in history? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. Viewership figures provided by Nielsen had Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress early last year, having a total of 47.7 million viewers. So his earlier speech actually beat this one. So he had beaten his own record. Okay. But okay, if we're talking just strictly State of the Union, let's do some more comparisons. In fact, how does he stack up versus President Obama? Well, former President Barack Obama had about 48 million in January 2010 and a total of 52 million in February of 2009 for his State of the Union speech. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Is 48 bigger than 45? 48 million bigger than 45 million? If it is, then the statement about his State of the Union speech being the most watched ever is factually incorrect. It's math. It's math. You want to take it like you don't believe it, you want to think it's fake news, then you think math is fake. Because those are the numbers. But look, at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter, right? Let me give you some more numbers, right? George W. Bush, in 2003, for his State of the Union, had 62 million viewers. And in 2002, he had 51.9 million viewers. So look, George W. Bush did even better than President Barack Obama. Now, did Obama go around and claim that he had better numbers than Bush for 1 year? No, because nobody gives a crap. Presidents don't actually care about that. Did Obama go around and claim that he had better numbers than Bush? No, of course not. So now, what did Bush? Bush was too busy to go out there and, of course, brag about this, getting higher numbers than other people, because he was too busy starting wars. But nonetheless, okay, this speaks to who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is a narcissist. Everything he does has to be bigger, better, and greater than Obama. It's almost as if he's jealous of the former president. In fact, he's undone or tried to undo everything President Obama had accomplished. He's even killed more civilians via drones than Obama had. So even on the bad stuff, the stuff that people are against President Obama on, he still has to do worse, right? No, I've got to get more innocent civilians killed through my drone strikes. Because if it's, isn't obvious by now, he is a deeply insecure person. Everything he does has to be the best ever. Even the towels. Remember the towels? The big, beautiful, soft towels he was throwing to the crowd in Puerto Rico. They're fucking towels. They're just paper towels wrapped in plastic. They're not big, beautiful towels. But everything for him has to be better, has to be fantastic, has to be great. They were normal towels, but again, this speaks to his need to lie all the time, constantly. Now, look, if he had left this as, hey, Fox News, thank you guys for all the positive comments. Fox News broke a record of viewers. Hey, that would have been fine. And if you've been like 45.6 million, wonderful. That many people tuned in, great. You're helping make America great again. That would have been fine. But he couldn't help himself. He had to lie again because that's who he is. That's who Donald Trump is. And look, if he's willing to lie about ridiculous and stupid things, then what else do you think he's willing to lie about? Okay. So that's ridiculous. Now let's go into serious. This past week or so, Republicans have been talking about the Nunes memo. Release the memo. We got to release the memo, right? Well, that memo was apparently written by Republican ally or Republican Trump ally Devin Nunes. Now, in it, they claim that it's a bombshell. It's going to discredit the entire Mueller investigation. It's going to show bias against Donald Trump within the FBI. So they're doing this so they can say, aha, 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 we knew it. The Mueller probe is nothing more. It's a witch hunt from people that are anti-Trump from the start. So now what we can do with that information in the Nunes memo, and since we showed the obvious bias, now we can fire Mueller, we can fire all those people, Rosenstein, we can get all over with, and we can wrap this whole investigation up and move on with making America great again, right? Now, of course, Donald Trump would love to do that, as Mueller is currently sitting in his bank accounts and investigating possible money laundering. I mean, forget about the collusion, forget about Russian hacking. Nobody cares who hacked into the DNC, except for, hyper-partisan Hillary Clinton supporters who blame the Russians for everything, right? Oh, the Russians, they made us lose the election. It's the Russians that took over our Facebook accounts. It's the Russians. The Russians, they did everything. No, they didn't. But look, Trump does not want Mueller looking into his bank account. He doesn't want him looking into possible money laundering. Now, who is Trump, favored, I guess, when it comes to financial transactions, financial dealings? Well, we find out that there are certain oligarchs in certain countries that he's more than happy to do business with and possibly launder money. I mean, real estate, which is what Donald Trump has always done specifically, has been a great way to launder large sums of money. So, okay, now Trump sees that and he's like, maybe I did launder a little bit of money here and there during my career. And so I want Mueller out of my bank account. I want him away from this Mueller or from this investigation into money laundering. Gone. I want him gone. I want him gone. And he even admitted it. He said sources are telling CNN that President Donald Trump is championing a controversial memo written by Devin Nunes as a way to discredit Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. They said in phone calls last night and over the past few days, Trump has told friends he believes the memo would expose the bias within the agency's top ranks and make it easier for him to argue that the Russian investigations are prejudiced against him, CNN writes, citing two sources. So now, how's he going to do that, right? Well, for one, the Nunes memo, but for two, the text between Peter Strzok and Linda Page. Now, those are two agents that were actually having an affair. They were lovers, and they were exchanging some controversial texts. Now, this was something that, of course, a lot of people were like, hey, let's see the text. We want to see the text. We want to see if there's a bias from these two agents that were fired from the investigation, right? Well, one of them was fired. One of them was off the investigation already by the time this actually came out. Now, one of these texts that were recovered sparked a firestorm on right-wing media, Breitbart, and this was the one talking about secret societies. This is one of my favorite ones, right? So, hey, what is this? A secret society? You didn't invite me to a party? Right-wingers, they took that and they were like, oh my God, there's a secret society within the FBI that is going to take down Donald Trump. That's their plan. That's their plan. No, that's crazy. And speaking of crazy, of course, Alex Jones, he's like, secret societies, now they're after Trump, and now they're going to nuke Washington, D.C. But wait, that's where the headquarters are, right? Or at least that's where the deep state is. Why would you want to nuke where you're at? You would also get killed. It makes no sense, but again, that's Alex Jones. But anyway, so one of the Republicans that was championing this conspiracy theory actually also admitted that might have actually been an inside joke. Oh, okay, so they were kidding. Okay, fair enough. Now, more information about Strzok actually came out in the last couple of days. Turns out, if anything, he might have been biased more against Hillary Clinton than anybody else. In fact, Strzok, according to The Hill, who in 2016, sent dozens of anti-Trump text messages and what conservatives have called clear evidence of bias. In fact, they said he was treasonous. Co-wrote the first draft of the letter against Hillary Clinton. So that letter, of course, was released by James Comey, and there's a lot of establishment Democrats that are like, James Comey, it's his fault. Hillary Clinton lost the election. No, of course not. I don't agree with that. I think that's ridiculous. No, it is not the Russians that made Hillary Clinton lose the election. No, it was not the Comey memo that made Hillary Clinton lose the election. Hillary Clinton lost the election because she was Hillary Clinton. And I've been into detail so much about that. I don't even want to go there anymore, right? Now, Strzok, right? The day after Strzok sent his draft to his colleagues, Comey released the final version of this letter, bringing Clinton's emails back into the spotlight just weeks before Election Day. Now, look, Strzok, it turns out when you actually read these texts, he was not in favor of Hillary Clinton, he was not in favor of Donald Trump, and he was definitely not in favor of Bernie Sanders. He hated everybody, right? And had written in this text that he believed personally that the Russia investigation was going to end up going nowhere. So he's somebody who's like, yeah, there's no there, there's nothing there. Like, I don't believe we're going to find anything that Trump had done wrong at all. So that's the guy that right-wingers are saying is completely 100% biased against Donald Trump. The very person that said, no, there's nothing to this Russia investigation in text. Again, another conspiracy from the right falls apart. But anyway, now, and by the way, Strzok is right. There is nothing to this Russia investigation, but there is a lot in this money laundering investigation that Mueller is now into. I think there might be something there. So that's one way they're trying to delegitimize the investigation. Of course, the other way is the memo. Now, Nunes is a Republican, and he is somebody who served on Trump's campaign. Now, in this memo, they alleged that the FBI had improperly targeted Carter Page with surveillance, had gotten a FISA warrant in order to surveil him just because he was a Trump staffer. Now, my understanding of the situation is that Page had been under investigation for being recruited as a possible Russian agent before he even joined the campaign. So before he was in the Trump campaign. And then when Rosenstein saw this, when he became, when Sessions had recused himself and he became, he got into the position that he's in, he saw the reasoning behind the warrant, and he was like, there is something there. Continue the surveillance, because we think this guy might actually be a Russian agent. He found it compelling enough to be able to sign off on another warrant. Now that, of course, has Donald Trump furious, as Rosenstein, along with his decision to appoint Mueller as special counsel, after Sessions recused himself, man, that got him steamed. Now, another person said that Trump is so frustrated with the Russia investigation, and in turn, Rosenstein, that he may look for any opportunity to build a case for Rosenstein's firing, according to CNN. Now, if he uses this memo written by somebody who worked on the Trump campaign to try to remove Mueller, that right there, that would be really, really dumb. Because that looks really bad. I mean, even if you look at the optics of it, that looks like you're incredibly guilty. Oh, I'm just going to use this biased memo written by one of my guys that just happens to get rid of one of my perceived political enemies. Now, look, Donald Trump even asked Rosenstein back in December if, quote, he was on my team. Are you on my team? He responded, well, we're on your team, Mr. President. I mean, what do you say when somebody asks you that, right? It's hard. I guess kind of a hard question to answer. But when you look at why they asked the question, you got to wonder what the implication of this is. So, look, it's no surprise that he does not want this investigation. He thinks it casts a shadow over his administration. And I guess, yeah, it does. Democrats can't stop talking about it, even the stuff that doesn't make any sense. And you can make a case that Democrats talk about it more than they talk about anything else, any of the other policy issues that are actually really important. And that's why I get mad at the Democrats. That's why I get mad at mainstream media, because they don't actually talk about real policy positions that the Trump administration is doing. They avoid it and they cover Russia 24/7. Now, I'm covering the stuff that I think actually is important, actually matters, and could lead to an actual constitutional crisis. That's just me. And you can disagree if you like. I'm just looking at what evidence that I've seen and go, yeah, this is what I think is happening. If you come to a different conclusion, that's fine. But anyway, look, if Donald Trump is innocent, and there's a possibility that he hasn't actually done anything, and that this entire investigation is a waste of time, that is a possibility. Well, if that's true, then why doesn't Donald Trump just let them do the investigation? And then when it's revealed that there's nothing there, they can go, ha, in your face, Democrats, losers. There wasn't anything with Russia. And this investigation proves it. But instead, what is he doing? He's fighting it tooth and nail. To the point of possibly obstructing justice. Why act like that if you haven't done anything wrong? That's my question. I mean, don't act guilty if you're not guilty of something. Again, I think that they're going to find evidence of money laundering. We'll have to see, though. This is assuming Donald Trump lets the investigation continue and doesn't actually fire Mueller, which, as I said before, could lead us to very, very uncertain territory when it comes to rule of law. So we'll see what happens on this investigation, where it goes, and it's getting tense. I don't know what's going to happen with Mueller, but okay. Anyway, so I'm going to take a quick break here. We'll come back. We've got some other stuff, alternative energy, what they're doing to that, as far as the budget deficits and things like that. I might get into a bit of MMT. If you haven't heard of it, it's kind of fascinating. All right. So we'll get back with that story. Stay right here around the nation. everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right. So if you haven't already, please give us a like and a share on YouTube so we can get out to more people. So, yeah, live viewer numbers have been pretty low, and it's I'm not sure if it's like a change for YouTube. I know that YouTube has been fucking with people's accounts and things like that and view counts, so when they started crushing small creators. So very, very important to please share and share and share. All right. That said, let's get into the next story. Let's get into something important. All right. So the Trump administration continues their assault against renewable energy. Now, not long after putting a major tariff on solar panels, which has dissuaded at least one major solar developer from investing $20 million in the United States and actually creating some jobs, it's been revealed that the Trump administration is now seeking to drastically cut the budget for renewable energy. Now, draft budgets obtained by the Washington Post show the Trump administration will only ask for $575.5 million in spending for the Energy Department's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. So that's $575 million. I mean, I think that, well, that's a lot of money, right? The normal spending level that was set for the fiscal year for that agency was set at $2.4 billion. I'm sorry, $2.04 billion. So that is a total of 73%. That is a 73% decrease in total spending. Gee, I wonder where they're going to take the money that they saved. My guess is they're going to put it more into coal. That's just me. Now, the Post reports that the draft budget documents also seek staffing cuts to the office, reducing the number of workers from 680 in the 2017 budget to 450 in 2019. In a statement to the Post, the White House said it would not comment on any leaked or pre-decisional documents prior to the release of the official budget, which, of course, that's a pretty standard thing. You ask them about it, like, no, fake news, leaked. Okay. Now, the Hill notes that the office conducts research development grants more aimed at developing and deploying energy efficiency and renewable technology, and has played a key role in dramatically reducing the costs of solar power. And so that's the stated goal of the agency. Is it a surprise that it got a 73% cut? They can't stand renewable energy. They can't stand the idea of reducing the costs of solar energy. Why? It's because if it's cheaper, well, then people are going to want to go and get solar panels. They're going to want to go with renewable energy. Hey, look, it's a cheaper form of energy. It's cleaner. It's 100% clean, and it's renewable. Why not go for that? So, yes, they despise this plan. They despise this idea of spending money on renewable energy. By them, I mean people like Rex Tillerson and others in our government that are paid for by fossil fuel interests. They know that renewable energy prices will continue to fall and threaten their monopoly on energy, and of course threaten their profits, threaten their campaign donations. They also know that in addition to people's awareness of climate change and people's worry about climate change, the idea of renewable energy, solar energy, is actually growing in popularity. So what I believe this is that this is the fossil fuel industry's last gasp at trying to postpone the inevitable. The switch to clean renewable energy, which is going to happen, and it's going to happen or have to happen very, very soon. Now, there's more. Draft documents obtained by the Post also contain sharp reductions in research spending, including an 82% cut into research on fuel-efficient vehicles, an 82% cut on research into bioenergy technologies, and a 78% cut for solar energy technology research. So look at the first one, right? 82% cut to fuel-efficient vehicles into research. So here's the Trump administration saying, we don't want your cars to use less fuel. we actually are okay with you spending more on the pump. We're not going to invest in making sure, or we're not going to invest in a significant amount of money to make sure that we have more fuel-efficient vehicles, that you use less gas, that you have to fill up less, that you spend less on gas per month. No, this administration is basically saying, we love coal, we love oil, we love the fact that you have to use gasoline, and we're going to make sure that you use lots more of it and not less. Wonderful. Now, think about the mindset here, right? Like if you're a Republican, I'm asking Republicans, do you want to pay more at the pump? Do you? Or do you actually want more research into fuel efficiency so that your cars run on less gas, so that you save money? No, I'm sure there are people out there. No, I don't want that. Pay more at the pump to trigger the libs. Yes, there are people that dumb. For the rest of us, no, this is not what we want. This is not what we want our government to look into. This budget draft is sort of a wet dream for oil and gas companies. And they're getting this because they bought the politicians on the right. And they did so because they know that in order to keep their monopoly on energy, that they have to kill their competition. And that's what they're doing. However, there's good news. What is done can be undone. So just imagine, right? We get progressives into office that will actually prioritize solar energy, that will actually prioritize renewable energy and fuel efficiency and things like that. Could you imagine? Well, you don't have to imagine. You could actually make it happen. That's why it's important to take part in the midterms and especially primaries. Primaries, I think, are the most important elections that you can take part in. Because that's how you actually get to pick who runs as the nominee for the party. And I'm not just saying for presidential elections, I'm saying for midterms as well. If you don't go and get involved in primaries and vote, and every state has their own different deadline and when to register for voting in primaries. Some are very, very soon, actually. If you don't get involved, then it's very certain that in a lot of areas, there will be a centrist milquetoast Democrat who takes money from oil and gas that will win, and that will basically quickly surrender to Republican demands. That's what we have right now. We have Democrats in office that are paid to lose. That's why we never win on any of these issues. They are paid to lose by corporations and special interests. That's why we have to get involved in the primaries to make sure that the people that are paid to lose to Republicans lose to progressives. So we have strong progressives that will stand up and fight Republicans. We need real progressives in office, real fighters for clean energy. If we're going to have a chance to undo the damage the GOP is inflicting on us right now with their backwards pro-fossil fuel ideology. We have a chance to win. Let's get out there. But we'll only win if you guys get involved. Okay. Moving on. So do deficits matter? Well, apparently not to the Republicans, who for years screamed about the debt and the deficits. Now, of course, that they're in charge, deficits, who cares about deficits, right? We love spending. In fact, we love spending all this money on war and defense and things like that. And look, to be fair, they are actually right when they say deficits don't matter. And they shouldn't matter no matter who's in charge. But I'm going to get to that a little bit later because it gets into what they call MMT. But according to the New York Times, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has been warning Congress about taking on the federal debt. We got to take on the debt. It's the most important thing in the world. That's what all the rich people care about. That's what all the donors care about. So yes, we're going to go and we're going to take on the federal debt. But they run into a little bit of a problem. See, the Republicans in Congress, who used to complain about the debt all the time, are going on a spending spree. Now, that's after they just gave $1.5 trillion to the richest Americans and corporations in the form of tax cuts. Now, that, of course, if you're thinking traditionally, leads to less revenue for the government. They write that Mr. Mnuchin's request to raise the debt limit stems from the simple fact that federal spending is far outpacing revenue. The Treasury must borrow money from private investors, but needs congressional approval to go above the $20.5 trillion debt limit that caps the United States debt load. Fiscal hawks warn that mounting federal debt will ultimately slow economic growth, but Washington shows no signs of paying heed. Congress is poised to dole out billions of dollars for a host of different priorities, and the spending spree is being embraced across party lines. So this is right from the New York Times, right? Now, Mr. Trump and Republicans are pushing for a big increase in military spending, plus the Democrats as well, who offer to give them $70 to $80 billion in additional spending towards the military. But they said, warning that the nation's security is at stake. The president wants $25 billion for border security, which, of course, Chuck Schumer had already put on the table. I thought you guys cared about debts and deficits. They continue. That border security, of course, would lead to a wall with Mexico, which is a ridiculous idea. Mnuchin also said on Tuesday that infrastructure would be an administration priority this year. Now, another thing that they're planning on spending money on is doing a infrastructure bill, which they say could garner bipartisan support. And then the White House has signaled that it would seek $200 billion from Congress to jumpstart what they called an infrastructure investment program. Now, look, I'm in favor of an infrastructure program. I've been calling for it for years. Yes, we need to go and rebuild our roads and bridges that are in terrible, terrible shape. Not only that, but we've got pipelines, we've got lead everywhere in the drinking water. It's not just in Flint. It's in many, many other places. And those need to be replaced. And of course, it's going to cost money, right? Now, the thing is, for Trump's infrastructure plan, his plan is to take that $200 billion and just give it to the private corporations. Here you go, have at it. And by the way, I also want to privatize roads and bridges. That means that if you're using a private road, what do you have to do? You have to pay a toll to use that road. Because they're not going to eat those costs. No, they're going to continue sponging money from you every time you want to use a road. And of course, where are they going to use it? They're going to use it on the busiest roads that they can. City roads. Now, of course, there's two problems with that. Number one, of course, you're being charged every time you use a road, which should have been public in the first place. And the second thing is, well, you have these roads that aren't very well traveled, but are important to getting places to places across the country. Well, you think a private corporation is going to want to upkeep that? No, of course not. They're not going to want to spend money and time on fixing those roads, so they're just going to let them fall apart while they focus on the roads that are actually going to make them money. That's how that works. So that's the problem with that infrastructure plan. That's why I'm not in favor. Now, on top of that spending, the party is still celebrating its sweeping overhaul of the tax code, casting aside expectations of how it will impact the national debt. Again, which I don't think actually matters. Now, it's not just Republicans. After loudly bemoaning that the tax overhaul would swell the national debt, Democrats are pressing to secure a sizable boost in spending on domestic programs, including billions of dollars to address the opioid crisis, which we should be doing anyway. And lawmakers from both parties are looking to approve about at least $80 billion in additional aid in response to last year's hurricanes and wildfires. Again, that is something that we should actually be doing. Representative Jim Costa, Democrat of California, and co-chairman of the centrist Blue Dog Coalition, said, quote, "The deep dark secret is Republicans like to spend money just as much as Democrats. They just want to spend it on something different." So let me stop there, because there's more to this article, but I think you guys get the point, right? So he's actually right. Yes, Republicans love to spend money. So do Democrats. That's not a surprise. That shouldn't be a surprise. Fiscal conservative? You're kidding me, right? No, whenever a Republican gets in office, he loves to spend like crazy. But what do they love to spend it on? They love to spend it on the military. They love to spend it on giant corporations. When Democrats get into office, they too also like to spend it on the military because the Democrats of today love war and are absolutely fine with funding endless war, which of course frustrates progressives to no end, especially me. But they also like to spend a little bit more on the domestic side, and yes, they like to spend on corporations as well. But the thing is that I think they both know that this whole debt and deficit thing, it's just nothing but politics. It's bullshit. And it's actually a right-wing framing. So, look, this is why Republicans love to spend when they're in power, but scream about the debt and deficit when they're not in power. Because they know it doesn't mean anything. And let me tell you why. The United States prints and controls its own currency. We can actually run out of money. We're not actually in debt to anybody. It's made up. It's not real. We can't run out of money. I mean, yes, what we can do is we can run out of resources, right? Now, resources can be purchased with money. I understand that. But we can't actually run out of money. We're also the world's reserve currency. So, in reality, when you think about it, debts and deficits actually mean nothing. We could print up another $1 trillion and pay for Medicare for all today. The only thing that we lack is the political will to actually do so. For example, yes, do we have enough doctors? Do we have enough hospitals? Do we have the infrastructure to be able to handle more people going in and using healthcare? I believe we do. The only thing that we would need is actually time to be able to transition and to set things up. We have money because we can print all the money that we want. It's the government can decide to push a button. Here's more money. So this whole idea that we're in debt, that we can go into debt, and that we have to watch out for our deficits and spending, things like that, and that we're going to run out of money and that we're broke, it's bullshit. It's not real. It doesn't exist. Now, what we do instead of actually doing real priorities, and this is where the framing comes into, is that, look, Republicans and Democrats always have more and more money for the military because they know, again, that we can just print up more money. We can send it to the military-industrial complex. Oh, you need an extra $80 billion so you can go bomb Syria? Here you go. Here you go. So, look, now what we have, of course, when we give those incentives to companies that make bombs and guns and ships, is that more companies are going to make bombs and guns and ships so they can get access to government money. Now, that's more resources going into things that we don't actually need, into the military-industrial complex, right? If we actually had an incentive for, again, let me use Medicare for All as an example, to build more hospitals and train more staff and nurses, and look, even education, train more teachers and start paying them better, then more industry and more resources would be built up around that. We would instead be using our finite resources not, for bombing people, but for educating people and making sure that they have health care. So understand that the framing, that this entire discussion of debts and deficits is based on right-wing framing, which is basically being used to ask for, if you try to enact any sort of progressive priority, they can ask, well, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? So, look, again, this is very, very simple when it comes to MMT. And actually, the discussion is there's a lot more to learn about this, but that's sort of the basic, right? So now, of course, there are people that are asking, but Jeff, we're in debt. We're $20 trillion in debt. How can you say that we're not in debt? Well, who are we in debt to? Private interests? We're actually more in debt to ourselves because, again, we print our own money, right? And yes, we're supposed to collect revenue from people through taxes, right? But again, taxes is just about taking money out of circulation. So, or actually taking it out of circulation, or taking it from wealthy people but through taxation and then putting it back into circulation by redistributing it. So, and again, we have an infinite supply of money, so I guess we could just pay off our debt right now. Push a button, right? But from what I understand, again, the Republicans, they know this and they decide, no, we want to frame this argument in a way that makes it so that we spend for our own priorities. And our own priorities are, of course, war and helping giant corporations. Their priorities are not, we cannot pay for healthcare because we just don't have the money. We just don't have the money. No, you don't have the political will to do so. This is not a money problem. It's an allocation problem. And it's a political will problem. Our government chooses to put its resources in where it puts their resources are unfortunately not for regular people. It's not on you. It's not on things we want or need like tuition-free college or single-payer healthcare. It's on bombing people. It's on tax cuts. It's on oil subsidies. And look, a lot of these people, these companies that get all this money, they sit on it, and that leaves, and it takes that money out of circulation. Now, instead of giving tax cuts to very, very rich people, they either need to put that money back into the economy by giving raises, or we as the government, we in the government need to tax them more. So this debt ceiling fight and this debt and deficit thing, again, this is political theater, right? They set a limit of how much they want to spend, and then they keep voting to increase it. But in the end, all it creates is needless political fighting. And I think it's just something that somebody came up with for some reason that they didn't understand that the government can basically print its own money. Now, the thing is, if we went to a gold standard, then it would be completely different. But since we're not, since we're in a more of a fiat currency and can print our own money, then we can get away with this. But Republicans use these fights to as a way, of course, to get extra concessions on spending priorities from Republicans. This right-wing framing and the total acceptance of it by a lot of Democrats and the populace at large is one of the reasons that we can't have nice things like single payer. I mean, they even talk about the idea that economic growth will slow if we have too much debt. And I don't understand why. There's simply no reason. Again, America can never go broke. No, we don't actually owe the Chinese billions and billions of dollars. They do not own most of our debt. Yes, there is some of it that Chinese investors will buy bonds that loan money to the government. That's not a majority. The majority is actually what we borrow against ourselves. And besides, if we run low on certain resources and we start getting inflation, then you can reduce spending in other places, for example, the military-industrial complex. That frees up resources in the economy for other things, as I explained earlier. As long as we have resources, people, machines, raw materials, and our own currency, there's no reason that we can't actually have nice things in America. The only thing in the way is the lie that Republicans and the right wing have sold us as a way to privatize the government in order to maintain their control over the economy. So that's where that so that's what I think about that. Okay. So let's move on. And what a sad story. Let me start that again. Okay. And what is an incredibly sad story, a New York man has been, I do not know how to start this because this is really, really sad. Okay. So a New York man had died just weeks after finally winning the lottery. Now, this is 50-year-old New York resident Donald Savastano, and he had recently won the New York Lottery's Merry Millionaire game and had won a total of $1 million. Now think about that, like $1 million. So this guy is like, yes, I'm on top of the world. I actually won the lottery. Wonderful. Now, before he won, he was a self-employed carpenter and just a regular hardworking person, right? So when, of course, he won the lottery, he was ecstatic, as most of you would be. In fact, he said, this is going to change our lives, to tell you the truth. So, yes, and that's true. Like, yeah, look, I'm sad. I can finally retire. I can take a vacation. I can even buy a new truck. Look, my life's looking up. It's fantastic. So he picked up that money and he planned to do all these things. But first, he decided he was going to finally go to the doctor, right? So the problem with him is that he was uninsured. So being a self-employed carpenter, jobs were difficult to pick up. And of course, health insurance is very important. So obviously no insurance through work. And despite the ACA actually, being there, the private market is still really, really expensive. And so not everybody can afford insurance. Now, he'd been feeling ill for a while, so he decided, I'm going to take my winnings and I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to get a checkup. Well, that's when they found it. Daniel Scott, who works at the store where Savastano had bought his winning ticket, told reporters that he had a friend come talk to me and told me that he was very sick and that he had both brain and lung cancer and that he was in the hospital and they didn't think he was going to make it. So he goes to the hospital. Finally, after all this time, after years of not being able to afford the doctor's office, he goes there, he gets checked out, and they find out he has cancer. Jesus, that is a bad break. And it didn't end well for him. Savastano died 23 days after winning the lottery. Scott said, quote, I was hoping that money was maybe going to save his life. And unfortunately, it was way, way too late. Now, look, I do my share of depressing stories on this show. But this one, I think this one is especially heartbreaking. I mean, here's a guy who finally got a break. $1 million, right? Working all his life, working hard. Finally makes it. Yes, I won $1 million. But then finds out too little too late. Because all the money in the world couldn't have saved his life. It was just too late. And you know what might have actually saved his life? If he had been able to get to the doctor soon enough to diagnose and treat that cancer. What was stopping him? The fact that he couldn't. He didn't have health insurance. Couldn't afford it. And despite feeling sick for a while, the guy kept working because, hey man, bills aren't going to pay themselves. Got to pay the bills somehow. America is the only country in the world where this happens, where people die from lack of preventative health care. This is why we need a better system. This is why we need Medicare for all. Now, I'm not saying 100% that this would have saved his life. But nobody should have to wait until they win the lottery in order to be able to afford health care. That's insane. That's insane. It's an insane system. But here in America, we have accepted that as normal and usual. Now, good thing is that's changing. Over 60% of Americans want a Medicare for all system. Now, is Congress going to do that? Absolutely not. Not the current Congress that we have. But, look, there are people out there, as evidence of that, that actively fight against healthcare for everybody. Look, I probably get comments on this video. I've had comments on videos before. I don't want to pay for your healthcare. Even if it means it costs you less money, which a Medicare for all system does, just the fact that any money goes to someone else is enough to turn people off. That is insane. That's barbaric. And people from other countries that have single payer, they look at our system and they go, well, how could you even let your own people die because they can't afford to pay for healthcare? We've never had that problem. We don't have that problem. Everybody can go and get healthcare. And sometimes there's a very small copay. Sometimes there's no copay at all. Because we take care of our own people. We make sure that everybody can get healthcare and preventative healthcare, which does save more money. Think about it if this guy had got in years earlier. They might have caught it in its beginning stages and might have been able to treat it. But stage 4 cancer, finding out when you have stage 4, because that's the only time that you were able to actually go to the doctor, that is awful. We can do better. And look, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this country that don't have any empathy. We could have Medicare for all. It's not that we don't have money. It's not that we can't do this. We just don't have the political will to put in a system that's actually going to save people's save money, but not to save money, but save people's lives, and give people health care so that things like this don't have to happen. And again, look at the irony of this story, right? Winning the lottery, something wonderful happening, just to find out that you're going to die 3 weeks later before you can even enjoy your life. God, man. The message here, other than, of course, fight for Medicare for all, is enjoy life. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to hit you, and and when it's going to take away what you have. Okay. I'm sorry. This is really, really sad. Let's pick it up a little bit. Now, in defiance of the Justice Department's crackdown on marijuana, the city of San Francisco is retroactively wiping out the convictions of thousands of people caught using pot. Now, this is The Hill reporting. San Francisco District Attorney General George Gascon announced a move on Wednesday and said that thousands of misdemeanor and felony convictions going back decades will be expunged or reduced. So now think about that, right? So there are a lot of people that end up getting arrested for non-violent crimes, the crime of possessing a little bit of marijuana. These people end up going into the system, and it hurts them for the rest of their lives. They can't get on a lot of social assistance. Oh, look, you have a drug charge. Can't help you there. Can't get on anything like that. You can't get on housing assistance, food assistance, anything like that. And, oh, look at that. You have a drug conviction. You can't get a job. So these people are basically in no-win situations. Can't get a job, can't get any help. How are you supposed to live your life, right? And this is basically from just a crime of possessing a plant. So now Gascon of San Francisco comes out and says, I don't want this to ruin people's lives anymore. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go back and we're going to retroactively get rid of these convictions. Misdemeanor and felony convictions back to decades. That is awesome. Now, Gascon said on Wednesday that more than 3,000 cases dating back to 1975 will be dismissed and sealed. Now, other cities across the state are also doing this same thing, including Oakland, where Assemblyman Rob Bonta has introduced a bill to the state assembly to allow automatic expungement or reduction of a prior cannabis conviction. The Drug Policy Alliance estimates that at least 5,000 people have applied for the marijuana convictions to be expunged since Proposition 64 was passed in the state. So, again, think about that. You're giving people a new start, a fresh start, so they can go back into society, so they can go back and work, and they can go and finally live their lives. This is excellent news. And, of course, this all has to do with the legalization of marijuana in California. This needs to be a national thing. Now, I said before that marijuana, I believe, is going to be legalized within 10 years. I think I said that about 2-3 years ago. So I think we're still on track. California is the 7th largest economy in the world. If it were its own country, it would be the 7th largest economy in the world. So they have a pretty big impact. And now that California has legalized marijuana, the dominoes. I mean, think about it this way, right? This industry is now, yes, it's an industry that is now making money. You even have Republicans that are now being paid by the marijuana industry suddenly changing their tune. Oh, hey, look, pot, not so bad. And let me give you the numbers on why they would come to that position. California's legal marijuana industry is booming and expected to sell 1 million pounds of the drug within the first year. Some state officials say that after taxes are levied, the cost of a pound of marijuana will settle at $4,600. And they've received, of course, already millions and millions of dollars in sales this year. So here we go. We have marijuana that's actually making people money. And of course, look, our system, as flawed as it is, actually kind of works in favor of marijuana, getting it entrenched as a protected industry. So now you'll have companies that will donate to politicians and politicians that will start seeing their donations increase and think, hey, you know what, weed, not so bad. I think I'm going to vote in favor of marijuana because now I'm getting paid. And that could spread to the national level. And we could see this change. I mean, again, ever since Washington and Colorado, we've seen a number of states legalize marijuana. I believe Vermont is the newest one to legalize recreational marijuana. The dominoes, they are falling one by one. And so, yes, within 10 years, I do believe we are going to see legal marijuana across the states. And this, look, and if they could do this in every state where they have legalized marijuana, say, okay, look, we're going to expunge your record. We're going to make sure that you can go back and live your life and work and seal these records. Wonderful. That not only is a blow to Jeff Sessions, of course, and his anti-pot crusade, it's also a big blow to private prisons, which, of course, house nonviolent drug offenders. So if the number of donations going to politicians, and this is a really weird part, increase to a point above what they get from private prison companies, well then, I think we've got an advantage, and we could start putting away the private prison industry. No pun intended. So this is excellent news. And I definitely applaud San Francisco for doing this. Hopefully, more cities, LA, et cetera, San Diego, will begin doing the same thing. So, and from there, spreading not only across one state, but across multiple states until we finally have actual justice in our criminal justice system. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Make sure to like and share if you haven't already. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you all tomorrow.